Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fireside Streams. My name is Carrera Kurnik. I am a culture and insights editor at Fashion Snoops, and today I am joined by Jayne Charneski. Jayne is a macro thinker and change maker with 20 years of experience in consumer audience insights. She is the founder of Front Row Insights and Strategy, which assists brands in finding the best engagement tactics for their various markets. Along with an impressive career as senior marketing executive at creative arts agency and member of the syndicated trend guide, The Cassandra Report, Jayne's insights on Gen Z and millennial consumer behaviors have been featured in the New York Times, NPR's All Things Considered, and CNN. So Jayne, it's wonderful to have you here today. How have you been staying centered in these strange times?
That's a great question. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here at Carrera. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yeah, how have I been staying centered? For me, it's a falling back on the practices that I've always relied on, whether that's a meditation practice, following different wisdom teachers. It's like doubling down on what I already know to like try to get grounded in this time. What I am blessed with, and I think advantaged with, is part of my job is connecting with consumers. So we do qualitative and quantitative research, a lot of qualitative research in the form of ethnography research, which means we, prior to this, would understand consumers by going into their homes and hanging out with them for a few hours and talk about lifestyle and this and that and whatever the brand sent us there to better understand. In the era of COVID-19, coronavirus, social distancing, all that work has gone from homes to online. So I am in this world where everyone's wanting to connect and needing connection, and I'm like blessed by my job is I've got to do that. Over the past 2 weeks, my team has talked to 70 consumers about various topics. It's almost like too much connection, quite honestly, over this Zoom. Zoom can be kind of exhausting. But all that to say, I'm staying grounded by my practices and also by this like connection and really like talking to people and connecting, fundamentally connecting. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd like to know more about what you're learning from all these conversations. I feel like this pandemic has come as such a shock to so many, and we're all reacting in our own ways, but can you point to any key differences between how, say, Gen Zs are reacting compared to millennials compared to baby boomers?
Yeah, there's actually some big differences. And I find it helpful if we look at everything in context, like what we were just speaking about earlier, context and by generational trait. So I could break down, I'll give you a little bit of background on each of these generations and it'll help make sense for how they're experiencing this pandemic right now. So let's start with the millennials. I think the millennials are hardest hit by social distancing, and I think there's 3 reasons why. One is they are a group-oriented generation. Growing up, it was all about their group. Their boomer parents had them overscheduled and in play dates and after-school activities. High school was all about team sports and how many groups and clubs could they join in order to get into a good college. In college, the leading end millennials invented social media so the group could stay together. It's like group. And then even if we think about millennials, their influence on culture at large tends to be group oriented. Everything from popularizing brunch to community-inspired, community-oriented fitness, from SoulCycle to CrossFit to music festivals. I mean, I would argue music festivals have been around a long time, but like millennials really took festivals and ran with them. And I would argue they're more interested in the festival than the music. So all this to say, millennials are a group-oriented generation. And what is like the absolute 180 degrees away from doing something in a group, it's social distancing. So this is hitting millennials like super hard. So that's one thing that millennials are dealing with. The second thing is, unlike Xers and Zs, millennials grew up in a positive economic and political climate. Xers don't trust anyone. They have been let down. They're kind of used to change and used to being jostled. Zs only know a world of recession, war, terrorism, school shootings, mass shootings, active shooter drills at schools. They are like, whoa, something's gonna happen and I'm just gonna brace for it, right? They're the anxious generation. Millennials, when their formative years, like things were great. They were wearing rose-colored glasses. They saw the world as like, as optimists. They were told by their parents and adults, you know, look, the world's your oyster, you can do and be anything you want. And they've just had a rough go of it. And this is just one more thing for them to overcome. And again, like Xers and Zs have that like built in from their childhood, like bad things are gonna happen. Millennials didn't have that. So I think psychologically, this is hitting millennials far harder than those other two generations. And third, I would say millennials are suffering this the most because they are just finally like getting in their groove, right? They had 9/11, they had the Great Recession that fundamentally changed the world they thought they'd be graduating into. The jobs weren't there, the careers weren't there, the economy that they felt like were promised. All that stuff like never materialized for them. The past few years have been great economically, and so they've just been getting their footing, just been getting ahead, and now this, and they're a generation that has tons of student debt, tons of credit card debt. Many of them are in debt from medical bills. The millennials over-index with having jobs in the gig economy, and that was the first thing to go when this pandemic, the first jobs to go when this pandemic hit. So like, just when they had it together, now this happens. So how is this affecting the different generations? I think it's affecting millennials, you know, quite hard. And I'm often asked, like, okay, what can brands do? How do you reach millennials and all that? And there's so many different tactics to reach them. And I think there's like so much noise with brands just trying to do something, and that's great. But sort of it's rather knee-jerk. And I think to reach millennials based on these generational traits, I think brands should do three things. First, just one more piece of context, and that millennials were the first generation to friend a brand, literally friend a brand and connect with a brand on social media. Millennials were the first generation to have a two-way conversation with a brand, right? Xers, it was just like brands, and all the previous generations, brands just talk to consumers. Millennials are the first to have a conversation, and they think of brands as friends. So what would a friend do in this time of crisis? They try to help, right? So how should they try to help millennials? Like by addressing those generational traits I mentioned earlier. Millennials are a group-oriented generation. As a brand, how can you bring that group back together online? How can you bring that group together in this age of social distancing? That's one thing. How can you restore their optimism? Like, what can you possibly do to restore their optimism? That's in their DNA. How do you tap into that? And third, like, how do you relieve some of their financial pressure? I think any brand that's hitting on these three things are just gonna like, this is what's gonna resonate with millennials, and this is what matters to them.
Awesome. So many good insights there. Now, I've heard the difference between millennials and Gen Zs in the psychology is that millennials are optimistic. They want to save the planet. They want to, you know, enact social change. But Gen Zs they're urgent. It's like it has to happen now. Like we need to do this now, which is such an interesting dichotomy there. Similar ideas but different paths.
Yeah, like millennials, when millennials were the age of Zs, it was all about, at the time we were calling it clicktivists. They're clicktivists, like liking a brand or showing support online through social, but like Zs are like in the streets, and Zs are just like making it happen because they are the ones that are going to be living with the effects of climate change. They are being gunned down in classrooms. It's literally a matter of life or death for that generation, compared to, not that it isn't for millennials, but like, wow, the Zs are just inspired and impassioned, and like, we all look out, everybody. They're just starting.
Yeah. For millennials and Gen Zs, we see influencer culture is so impactful for how they buy, how they frame their views. Do you see this changing, or how has it changed during COVID, and how do you think it'll change in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There was an article in Vanity Fair last week, and it was, I don't remember the headline, but it was something like, is this the end of influencer culture? And they talked about something Navy, and I think primarily something Navy, but some missteps of other influencers. And I think this is just gonna, just like it's gonna change culture at large, it's gonna change influencer culture. And I think this is the key. The key is going to be, how do you read the audience? And whoever can read the audience well right now is going to succeed as an influencer. I think this pandemic is going to create a lot of white space opportunities for new voices and people who can really like tap into this and feel it and connect with it and tell stories that people want to hear. So it's going to take a massive pivot. And I think this crisis is going to shake out a lot of the old guard, and there's going to be this new group coming in. I absolutely don't think it's the end of influencer culture. I think it's a challenge to understand the audience. And this is true of influencers, media companies, like everybody is going to have to like get a sense for the appetite of what people want. And I think the brands will show up. If there's an audience, a viable audience there that an influencer is amassing, brands are going to show up. So influencer culture will continue. It's just like, I think there's going to be a fallout. There's going to be like a crash and burn of people who aren't getting it right. And there's just going to be so much opportunity for people who can communicate well in this time.
It's funny you use that term, crash and burn. I know the New York Times had that article, Celebrity Culture is Burning, and they reference something Navy, they reference Ellen DeGeneres, like, you know, she's crying in her mansion, and, you know, so many people are trying to pay rent, and the insensitivities there. It's interesting to see the shift happen in real time. We've been seeing at Fashion Snoops, a lot of nurses and doctors on TikTok are doing the dances, but with COVID specific information. We're seeing like hamsters like becoming the new influencers, because I guess people just want that break from all the traumatic information to just look at something cute. So a lot of the way we're thinking about who can influence is changing.
Totally. And I think everyone is so raw and sensitive right now that any misstep is going to get magnified by several orders of magnitude. Like I would add, I was reading a few articles about an interview that Justin Timberlake did. And it was something like he said, like, oh, we're holed up in, it's not even worth repeating. But anyway, it was like something that I think wouldn't be offensive a month ago or 2 months ago. And now it's like, oh my God. Like, and with cancel culture too, it's like you've got one shot and you mess this up, there's going to be a pause before you can come back.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if companies are looking towards do's and don'ts, it feels like, you know, we've discussed some, you were mentioning restore optimism, create groups, you know, don't be insensitive to the fact that everybody's struggling differently would be a...
Yeah, and I think like what I've noticed, and to be honest, like my company was guilty of the same thing. Like right when this happened, when we started going into social distancing lockdown, whatever you want to call it, at the beginning of March, we were like, oh, quick, let's do something. We have a panel of Gen Zs and we asked them questions all weekend. And we came out with like, we were going to come out with this report and keep reporting. And then it just felt like, wait a second, like everything's happening so fast. Just my own experience is so moment to moment, day by day. And I think brands, by putting too much emphasis on what is happening now and trying to track moment to moment, I think that's a mistake because everything is so fluid. And I see that in other research companies doing surveys and whatever. And I read that and I'm like, that's a little, in 72 hours, that data's stale. So I think like for brands, I think there should be ideally this like slow down and just like pause, deep breath, and then let's reroute.
Right, it's almost like meditative business strategy. Like let's pull what we've brought there into how we proceed.
Yeah. There's this like need, and I had this knee-jerk reaction to do. And just even like personally, I feel bombarded with do this workshop, sign up for this class, make the most of this time. And I think like brands and as marketers, we're thinking the same, but I think that's the wrong thing to do right now. I mean, we come out of this, it's like, wow, there's gonna be so much to learn, so much to do, so much to react to, but
yeah.
Right now.
I'm interested, on your LinkedIn, you give tips on online focus groups. I know you used to do these in person, you have to do them online now, and you've been kind of talking about the new opportunities, but the new challenges. I was wondering if you could speak to that, and also the researcher's toolkit for gaining insights now that everything is online.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying I was never a fan of online research when it comes to qualitative, anything, any sort of interviews, ethnographies. I'm like old school purist. You got to get down and dirty and spend a day with someone, spend a few hours with someone. I want to be on their like living room sofa. I want to like, you know, I'm really a big fan of the immersive experience. But I will say, the pandemic is forcing us all to get more comfortable, more skilled, more adept at communicating authentically on video. And never was this clearer to me before than when I did all these focus groups and this research online, where people aren't having the technical problems that they used to have. People are sort of like semi-art directing their shot. People are used to speaking in front of the camera, used to talking to each other in the Zoom type situation. I've actually used different research platforms, but it's all essentially the same. But wow, it's like the difference between today and just a couple of months ago is astonishing. And so I feel, whereas researchers like me, I've been doing things online has given me pause, and now it's like, no, let's just like let it rip. This is actually amazing. And I know like at the end, usually our interviews are for a set amount of time, and historically where you come to the end of the interview time and people are kind of like looking around, looking at their watch, like checking emails, but people are like want to connect, want to be present, want to like actually like get their mind off of things and talk to me and talk to my team. And it's really been like they're hanging out there until the end. We're going over our interview time. Of course, like I guess many people don't have places to go, but all that to say, like online research is so like the participants are like loving it right now. We're extracting information that we need and truly connecting with people like we haven't been able to do before. So it's been amazing. Yeah. So if I were a brand and online work had given me pause like it did me personally, I'd say like go for it. It's working. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have a background in music, media, and entertainment. What kinds of entertainment and engagement strategies do you think will be successful during the next few months of quarantine? Like, what are people really craving right now out of entertainment?
Yeah, I think people are craving togetherness and people are craving escape, like for sure. Any sort of, I was mentioning this earlier with group activity, but it is true of like any generation right now. The social distancing, quarantining is really getting, it's really getting tough at this point. So some like shared experiences I think are key. I think for like with Gen Zs in particular, I said escape, and that's true. It's true of all generations, but I think like for Gen Z in particular right now, they're North Stars making the world a better place. They're activists. And I think anything, especially when it comes to brands, what brands can do to engage them, to activate them would be some sort of winning strategy, even if it comes through entertainment, and even if it comes through something other than a straight ahead political campaign or something like that. They are I'll give you a little bit of background on Zs to contextualize all this. So generations are defined by their birth year and then the impactful moments of their early lives. So as I mentioned before, Zs only know post-11 World War, terrorism, school shootings, natural disasters, like all that I mentioned. And they were the first generation to not be shielded from adult content at an early age like previous generations were. Historically, society has tried to shield children from the harsh realities of the world, but with Google, with the internet, Gen Zs grew up with with access to more information. They just knew more at an earlier age. So they are realists, they're pragmatists, they're hardworking, they're gritty, they're financially responsible, and they believe it's their duty to fix the world that the adults, quite frankly, messed up. And as I mentioned earlier, it's because it's a matter of life or death with climate change, with school shootings, like, et cetera. And their heroes are activists. Like, activism is in the core of who they are. So any sort of like content, any sort of brand engagement that can also tap into this, like, we know you're hurting, we know this is painful, we know, but here's how you can make a difference from home. Here's how you can, like, if they could just tap into that activism ethos somehow, that is what would resonate with Zs really more than anything, because they are just like revving to do something. Even in that, when I was telling you that like knee-jerk reaction we had when this first happened, like, let's understand what Zs are thinking. That one weekend when we did this outreach, we were hearing just in a couple of days, like how Zs were turning to activism to get them through this time. It's like in their DNA, like I said. So we found out there's this platform called Invisible Hands Deliver. It was started by a student on spring break on the Upper West Side in Manhattan. And it was a platform for people who needed groceries and products delivered, that someone could come and deliver them. And this is like 48 hours into the, okay, we're shutting things down. Same thing, some college students started a platform called OK Zoomer, which was, now that all the college students are home from school, off campus, not coming back, this is a way to connect with fellow college students around the nation. And like, I think 2,000 or 3,000 people signed up in a matter of 2 days. So all that to say, it's like, this is a genre, if you want to get Gen Z's attention, you want to resonate with them, like, you've got to like take that drive to be activists and just help them unleash that, because that is what they are wanting to do. That's like, it's who they are. And right now they're somewhat sidelined for this pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to some best-in-class examples of brands that have implemented some of these into their engagement strategies.
Well, to be honest, I haven't seen much yet. And I feel like even I was like bookmarking different things. I think Ad Age or some industry press has a role of what all the different brand engagements that are happening. And for me, and again, I'm not on top of everything, but I haven't seen much other than we are donating, we are doing something, we are involved, we are on it, we are doing some sort of outreach. But it feels to me like up until now, it's just like, this is what we're doing. It's like one way that hasn't like swung back around. I could, like, I'm not on top of everything, and I've been doing these consumer interviews for the past 2 weeks. So I've been in a little bit of a hole, but like, I have not seen that. And I certainly have not seen as much of it as should be happening right now. So both like activating the Gen Zs, activating the activism within Gen Zs, and then bringing the millennial groups back together and the optimism for that. Like, I'm not seeing the two-way flow that would be ideal.
Yeah, sounds like there's a white space. I feel like what I've been seeing too, there's a lot of like, if you buy this jacket or this sneaker, we'll give 50% to the proceeds. And it's almost like there's a pushback against that kind of thinking when it comes to COVID. Don't put it on me to give you money. It's almost like, how can you be selfless? I think something that we've seen at Fashion Snoops is U-Haul. Noticed that so many students were kicked out of their dorms. So they were saying, we will move and store your items for 30 days free of charge. We know it's a tough time, we get it. So it's almost like you kind of have to give up a little bit of the profit incentive to really appeal authentically to people right now.
Yeah, and going back to what I said before, like, what would a friend do? Millennials think of brands as friend. What would a friend do? Like, U-Haul example is like perfect. A friend would come and like get your stuff. Right? Like, that is like, nails it. That's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, I mean, you've mentioned you've been in conversation, you've got boots on the ground or on the internet, essentially. speaking to Gen Z, what's one of their major sentiments right now in all this? Are they viewing it as like, oh, I'm going to have a self-care retreat, I'm going to produce, or are they saying, I want to just kind of center myself. This isn't a productivity competition. I don't know if you've seen any.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's a, before this happened, we were putting out this report around these different cultural movements within the generations, and we were going to talk about Gen Z as being what we were calling self-optimizers. So this need to improve, oftentimes with technology, and this orientation towards betterment and excelling through mind, body, and I'm not going to, it seems so in many ways irrelevant right now, or frivolous, but all that to say, I think they are trying to make the best of this with the tools that they have. They are an anxious generation. This is certainly amping that up. They are, I don't want to say paralyzed, but they're just trying to figure out what this is. I think they're grieving the high school seniors, not their senior year, college senior, all that, and a generation where so much has been taken away, where so much has been so hard. I think they are just in this moment of grieving. And just like I said, okay, I'm doubling, how am I thriving in this? Or how am I getting through this? I'm doubling down on what I know. I think Z's are doubling down on what they know. Like I said, so activism would be one thing. So helping them be active, helping them make a difference in the world to the extent possible is what they are looking for right now. Yeah. And then the grieving, man,
there's the grieving, there's the fear, the uncertainty. At Fashion Snoops, we've been really interested in examining the powerful motivator of what fear is. If we use it and channel it in the right way, we can actually use it as fuel. So I was wondering if you've been using your fear, your uncertainty to channel any of your creative outputs, or how you're using fear as fuel.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am taking the same advice that I just doled out for brands, where it's okay, take a pause. Let's just kind of see how this plays out. I've been trying to get comfortable in my fear, basically, and instead of this do, I should do something, make the most of it. I am just no, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna feel it and see where that takes me. So it's more of a mindful, I'm trying to be more mindful in my reaction here, and really falling back onto just this idea of how is this serving me? I'm really sitting in that question. So how is this serving me? What I'm watching? How's this serving what I'm reading, what I'm eating, how I'm spending my time, but not taking it more heavy than that. I'm brewing kombucha for the first time. I'm taking on some new projects, but nothing heavy, nothing learning another language or, all that stuff. And I do feel there's that pressure to make the most of this, whatever that means. And I believe making the most of this is sitting with it and sitting with that fear, at least for the time being, taking a pause. Okay, this is what's happening. And then diving in once it's in my body, Yeah.
I agree with what you're feeling. Just even personally, I feel when when you scroll on Instagram, there's all these memes that say, if you don't take this time to learn a new language and learn a new skill, then you've wasted it. And it's whoa, we're all going through this massive event. If I can take some time to myself and learn how to brew beer, that's what I'm personally doing. Now it feels unhealthy compared to your kombucha, but to learn, do small things to make myself feel better. I feel consumers are going to start pushing back against this idea that, if I don't know Chinese by the end of this pandemic, then I've failed. I think we should all be more kind to ourselves in terms of what is failure and what is success.
Totally. There's the productivity shaming thing that's happening right now. That's just it's not making anyone feel good except for the people who are selling the webinars or,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my next question is, this coronavirus has obviously been the catalyst for incredible change in all of our lives. When we come out of this crisis, what do you think society will gain, and what do you think we will have lost?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's so early to say because I think we have so much. We're at the end of the beginning, as I read today somewhere. So this is still so new and so fluid. But I think how we spend our time is going to change. What we value is going to change, and I think for sure, how we use technology is going to change. Just my example of the 70 people that I spoke with, not all of them were Z's, and like people are comfortable communicating online, working from home, all that stuff. It's that technology, I think, is going to, screens are going to be more front and center in our life than ever before, whether that's good or bad or, remains to be seen. And what we value and what that looks like, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be the end of luxury as we know it. I think like after the Great Recession, we come from conspicuous consumption recession to like quiet luxury. And I think we're going to go back to that again. And I think that's like where the influencers come in, like we talked about earlier. Getting that right, I think is going to be really hard, but not impossible. So I think it's super early days to really like plant a flag on anything in particular, but screens, luxury, and values, I think we are in for a big shift. And also I think we've got an election coming up, and I think this pandemic is really having people rethink the role of government and politicians and healthcare and all that. I mean, there's going to be a wake. We're going to be in that wake for a long time, and that's huge. And I think there's different conversations that in politics that we were having at the beginning of the year that are just fundamentally shifting, especially as we get closer to the election.
Right. Yeah. It feels like in every category, something will change in our viewpoint, from behavior, social ideas, from politics to sustainability. I was wondering if you could speak a bit on how Gen Zs or millennials are thinking about sustainability in these COVID times.
Yeah, well, I think they're always thinking about sustainability. I think they'll continue to think about sustainability. I think this would be a good time for a brand to like flex its sustainability muscles, because people are at home, people are paying attention. I think people are receptive to messaging from brands right now. I know especially Gen Zs love to support a brand whose values are aligned with their own. So anything a brand is doing right now related to sustainability, they should be making sure consumers know about it, for sure. And I think like I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I feel like something like pollution levels are down 50% in New York City. I could have that number wrong, but let's just say pollution is obviously down. I'm not quite sure how much, but I think like we are gonna, before we all come back online, I think there's gonna be this like environmental pause where it's like, wow, the animals are back out and the air is clean and whatever. And I think there's going to be this inventory taking at that time, especially led by Gen Zs, who are so passionate about climate change. And I think they're going to also point to, this is already happening, them pointing to how the world was so quickly able to mobilize. Some would say not quickly enough, but we did mobilize to fight this pandemic, that this virus that could kill us. Well, climate change could kill us too. Where's the mobilization for that? I think that is going to be that movement is going to be like just riding the wave of this pandemic.
It's interesting. We really get to see the before and after picture of what the world would look like without so much human involvement. With the skies clearing over China and the Venice canals are clear. I mean, what would it look like?
The dolphins in the Venice canals are like fish or something. I remember. Yeah.
Interesting. Something else, maybe this is a shift of gears, but something I've been seeing in Gen Z's kind of attitude towards things is they really take like an absurdism and sarcastic view of all the tragedy. When when these things happen, they'll make jokes. There'll be the memes about like, oh, World War III is going to happen, or like, oh, they'll joke about death and pandemics. It seems like I'd love your insights into what type of coping mechanism that is.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think, well, from an early age, Z's were from elementary school, they were shooting video and editing video and like working on their personal brands. So that was happening. And then we had this technology, first Vine, then Musical.ly, then TikTok. And we have these platforms that support those like quick hits of content. And what's the best quick hit of content? Something like funny. And so that's their like shorthand way of communicating. We did a survey early in this year about all manner of things for Z's, but one of the categories we looked at was politics. And we asked, how do you find out about the news and information about the upcoming election? And TikTok, I forgot, I don't remember the exact percentage, but like there was a fair amount of Z's who are finding out about the presidential election through TikTok. And I'm like, how's that even possible? Like, how does that work? So, and it's like seeing a few people told me when Elizabeth Warren dropped out of the race, they found out about that through these reaction videos, like crying and whatever, which led them to other sites. Although some Z's did tell me when Bloomberg was running, they were seeing stuff from him or related to him directly on TikTok. But all that to say, I think it's two things. It's like they were sort of imprinted as like young kids with creating content. What do you create as a young kid? Like funny stuff or stuff that you think is funny. And then these platforms, which are just made for quick bursts of content, it's like a perfect marriage of those things. And after like creating that content for so long, you get pretty good at it. So that's like that's their thing, you know?
Yeah. I'm interested in talking more about TikTok. I mean, I'm so interested in the format and wondering, what does it give consumers that Instagram doesn't, that maybe Facebook doesn't, you know, what does it serve in the marketplace that other platforms aren't serving, and how can brands take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think like TikTok to me feels like it's less serious. Like I was talking to this reporter for the Wall Street Journal and about curating Instagram and how teens, I feel like they constantly have to refresh that. Like Instagram's like a resume. Colleges are looking at it. Prospective boyfriends or girlfriends are looking at it. Like it's like your best face forward. TikTok is like, it's similar to Snapchat in that it's like the lighter side of things. It's a time to be like goofy. It's a time to be funny. It's a time for humor. It's a time for, it's not a time for that, like that polish, and it would be like what you do when you're like alone with your friends, right? Whereas Instagram and these other platforms are like, you know, what like maybe LinkedIn is to us. I'm putting different things on my Instagram than I am for LinkedIn. TikTok is just like the fun times. Yeah.
That's
and in those bite-sized doses. I mean, that's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's just from my experience of both apps. One small thing I've noticed is that on Instagram, you do not post the same outfit twice. You wear it once and you burn it. I don't know what they do with it, but they don't wear it again. Whereas on TikTok, you see users maybe posting multiple videos a day. So it's a lot less about, yes, they're showcasing the outfit still, and it's very much about, this is my outfit. This is a song that matches how I'm feeling in this outfit, which is very interesting. But then also posting multiple ones. So I think maybe where Instagram is having engagement problems, where, you know, people are posting and deleting, there's a lot less pressure on TikTok, where someone might post 4 times a day, which is what you want when you're a platform. You want people to be posting as much as possible. So I think that's interesting. It is a little less serious, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's super
And I think it's like of the moment right now, because it is so escapist. I mean, I'm talking to people who are Xers, who are now discovering it since they're home with their teenagers. And they are telling me they have like gone down this like rabbit hole of watching these dance videos and whatever, and like to their surprise. So it's like it's the escape that many of us are needing and wanting right now. this is the platform for that.
Yeah, it's so performative. When I scroll through it, everybody is dressing like themselves, but as a character of themselves. You have so many trends coming out of this. Cosplay is huge on this. People will cosplay as SpongeBob or people from The Office. It's really interesting. It's almost like you have a camera in the bedrooms of people all around the world as they experiment with makeup and identity in this really interesting way. I mean, I'm a big fan of TikTok.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
No, it's so interesting. I think one of my last questions will be, the world is essentially on pause right now. So many businesses are rethinking their strategies, rethinking what markets they can go into. And so I was wondering if you had any tips on what shifts a company should consider making right now if what they aim to do is engage with Gen Z or millennials in the future. What is necessary to do right now to set yourself up for the future?
Yeah, I think in the short term, just to recap what I was saying about millennials, reach them by getting them back into groups, reach them by tapping into their optimism or trying to get their optimism flowing again and relieving some of the financial pressure. I think for Z's, it's about like, how can you bring them together and how can you facilitate some sort of activism within that group? And I think those things are important. And I think that's like for the short term. And then I think there's just a pause because like the dust, we are at the end of the beginning. The dust has not settled, but I think once it starts settling, then I think brands have to figure out what's going on in like the hearts and minds of consumers, because things have changed. Like things have changed fundamentally, and what was fine a couple months ago is no longer going to be fine. Just like the influencers, I think they were that leading edge of how a brand could get things wrong. So I think they've got to really, really come back and sit with their consumers and really understand what's going on in their hearts and minds, and then make a plan. So for now, reach them as a friend. I say like millennials think of brands as friends. Z's think of brands as allies, like brands being help make the world a better place along with these Z's. And then pause and then figure out hearts and minds and then take it from there. I mean, because who knows? Who knows how long we're going to be doing this, Yeah.
It really is. There's so many different figures out there, from 3 months to a year to 18 months. I mean, we really, that head is uncertain, but I think, when you have a map with blank spaces, sometimes you can doodle in your own imaginary places of what you want your business, the world, your behaviors to look like going forward. So
absolutely, it's a great time to reinvent yourself if that's what you were looking to do. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been such a wonderful time to hear your insights and everything.
Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation. Yeah. All right.
Thanks for tuning in to another Fireside Stream. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please tune in to the next one.